Hi, Monica Miller here, the Legal Director and Senior Counsel at the American Humanist Association, and this is Legal Tuesdays, where I answer your questions about separation of church and state that you've either asked for us on our social media platforms or on our website online form. This question today actually came from our education department. Someone had asked Emily a question, and she forwarded it to me. Luckily, because I've taken a little bit of some time off of this series, I have a good back burner of questions, but keep them flowing because I really like the creativity of some of these questions. This one is a really good one. The person asks, is it legal to teach humanism in the 10 Commitments in public schools? And should parents and teachers try to bring humanist lessons into the classrooms? We focus a lot of getting religion out of the schools, but I don't think we say anything about getting ethics and humanism into schools. Is it legal to teach humanism in the public schools? The humanist 10 commitments and that kind of thing is basically the question. And the answer is nuanced, as they usually are here. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment requires neutrality between religion and non-religion. In other words, the government cannot favor atheists any more than they can favor Christians and so forth. So that principle is settled, although the courts haven't necessarily applied that rule even-handedly, but that's a secondary issue. So there were a lot of cases in the 80s and 90s involving humanism as a religion, and these cases were mostly in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. There were several here in the 9th Circuit, and I say here because I'm in California, where religious groups, religious parents were challenging components of public school education as advancing the religion of humanism. So there actually is case law saying as much that you cannot promote humanism in the public schools any more than you can promote Islam and so forth. But there is a distinction between teaching humanism as a sort of a religion or as a non-religion, to say, kids, there is no God, and humanism is the only way, and here are the 10 commitments, and you must follow these, or some sort of version of that would probably not be allowed. But just because something coincides with a religion, and I'm not saying humanism is a religion, I shouldn't say no one's saying humanism is a religion, because the courts actually do treat humanism like a religion, whether it's cast as a non-religion, or whether it is seen as something operating quite like a religion, but not a religion. So the Supreme Court in the 60s, almost unanimously in a Torcaso versus Watkins, had said that secular humanism is a religion for First Amendment purposes, for the purpose of giving it equal treatment, or for other reasons. Justice Alito asked me in the United States Supreme Court in the Bladensburg Cross case whether the government could put up a giant, humanist symbol or something to that effect. And I found myself in the U.S. Supreme Court making a happy humanist, because I figured they didn't know what our humanist logo looked like. And I said, no, the government couldn't probably put up a giant happy humanist war memorial any more than it can put up the cross if the intention is not even just the intention, but if it's clear that it's a humanist symbol. So going back to the question of the public schools, in these cases in the 11th Circuit and the 9th Circuit, the courts basically said that teaching, the challenges were to things such as home economics books. There was a challenge, I think, to Harry Potter, some other kind of books about witches and that kind of thing. And most of the Learning Tree, I think, was one of them. Most of these cases came down on the side of education and said that you're not promoting humanism by teaching secular concepts or things that overlap with secular humanism. So the 10 Commitments, there's nothing in the 10 Commitments, if I recall, that says anything that would put humanism above another faith group. There are all secular values. They're not religious values. And so I don't see any problem with advocating for those to be in classrooms. I think there might be an issue with calling them the humanist principles or having a humanist logo, but maybe not. So I definitely think the 10 Commitments are ripe for public school classrooms. I think there's certain programs that I think humanists should be doing that maybe don't fit into classrooms, but there's the after school, the Good News Club kind of groups that prey on public school students, and they put flyers in cubbies and have programming like right when the school bell ends so that kids feel pressure to go. So I think that there should be parallel programs like that available for students. The Satanists did a really good one called After School Satan that was supposed to be a parallel to the Good News Club. So all this is to say that yes, humanism can be introduced into the public schools, and so too can some of our programs, and I think we should be doing that, but just be careful that if you tread into the territory of looking like that humanism is functioning in that context like a religion, or you're advocating for humanism over something else, I think that's where you'll run into issues, but that's what I'm here for. So present your questions to me if you run into any hiccups with getting humanism and its values into schools. That's all for today, but I look forward to talking to you on the next segment.